Today we are gonna see how inexpensively we can recreate some of those very expensive prepackaged vegan snacks. Hey everybody, welcome back to the channel. My name is Danny Taylor, co-owner of VeganProteins Online Coaching, and today I am going to be recreating 4 very expensive vegan snacks. If you were to walk into a store and buy these off the shelf, every time I've done it, I'm just like, oh, that hurts, because I know these things can be made way more inexpensively, but I've never actually put that all together. So today I'm gonna show you 4 of those recipes. And if you're looking for ways to level up your physique as a vegan, be sure to hit that subscribe button because we put out new videos every week. Things like recipes, tips and tricks, meal plans, and really helpful information with none of the fluff. All right, let's get into it. Let's get started with the recipe that inspired this entire video. We are gonna be starting with kale chips. Look at how many kale chips I made for under $5 total. And in this video, I am including all of the costs of all of the spices, oils, vinegars, all of that, as opposed to my dollar store video where I didn't. This is all included, under $5 for all of this in kale chips. This would be like probably $30 if you were to buy it separated into bags. So let me show you how to do it. We're gonna get started with a bunch of washed kale here, and we are just gonna tear it up into pieces, leaving the stems. The pieces don't have to be perfect. Some can be bigger, some can be smaller. Don't worry about it. Next, in a small blender, we are gonna add a 1/4 cup of cashews, 2 tablespoons of lemon juice, a 1/2 teaspoon of salt, a 1/2 cup of salsa, a clove of garlic, and a 1/3 cup of nutritional yeast, and we are gonna blend that until it is totally smooth and creamy. Once that's totally smooth, use a rubber spatula to get every last bit of it out, and we're gonna drizzle it over the kale. Don't just dump it in one big lump in the middle because it'll be harder to distribute later. This works so much better with hands. We are going to mix this with your hands. You can massage it a little bit. You want to make sure that the kale is evenly coated in this cheesy sauce. You're going to spread it out on your tray. You don't want too many pieces overlapping, but it does not have to be perfect. You may have to do this part in batches. My air fryer / dehydrator tray was kind of small, so this took about 3 batches, but it's only about 10 to 15 minutes depending on your batch of kale, so it's not too bad. And I put mine in on the air fry setting at 180 degrees for 15 minutes. When it's done, I'll check if there are any pieces still wet. I'll pop them back in for a couple minutes, but usually 15 minutes gets these crunchy, delicious chips. So this entire recipe made over 4 ounces of kale chips. Your mileage may vary depending on how dehydrated yours are. But for this recipe, my batch here, each ounce had 95 calories, 9.8 grams of carbohydrates, 4.6 grams of fat, and 5.6 grams of protein. And this entire recipe cost me $4.34 to make. So I made more than twice as much as most of the bags you can buy at the store for about half the price. Next, we know them, we love them, Lenny and Larry's cookies. They're everywhere across the country in gas stations nationwide. But I am not a huge fan. I think the fact that a cookie is like 500 calories is kind of crazy, and the amount of protein in it is kind of meh for calling it a protein cookie. So I have a recipe that's not quite a dupe because I actually think that it's better. So these are gonna be double chocolate peanut butter cookies, and not only are these way cheaper, but the macros are better. Way better. It's not close. It's not close. Preheat your oven to 350 degrees, and in a medium bowl, we are going to do a 1/4 cup of all-purpose flour, 1/4 cup of vital wheat gluten, a 1/4 cup of PB2, a 1/4 cup of cocoa powder, a 1/4 teaspoon of salt, 1/8 a teaspoon of xanthan gum, 20 grams of plain pea protein, 2 teaspoons of baking powder that I almost forgot, and I'm using 4 packets of stevia, but that's entirely up to you. We're gonna whisk it until there are 0 lumps left here. In a separate bowl, we're gonna add a cup of soy milk, 2 tablespoons of peanut butter, a teaspoon of molasses, 2 tablespoons of sugar, 2 teaspoons of vanilla, and we are gonna whisk this also until there are no lumps of the peanut butter in there. Add the wet ingredients to the dry ingredients and then mix that all together. And if you are smarter than me, you will not use a whisk because I ended up with one giant cookie dough lump that I then had to press out with a rubber spatula. So just use a rubber spatula or a spoon to get this all together. You want to see no dry bits of flours or anything like that. I'm adding 2 tablespoons of chocolate chips. All I could find was the chunks, but I wish they had had the mini chips because it would have distributed better. On a baking sheet with a silicone pad, I'm going to spritz it with some cooking spray. And then I'm going to use my rubber spatula to kind of divide this dough ball up into quarters. It doesn't have to be perfect because we're going to shape these cookies a lot after they're on the tray. But make sure you give them some space because they do expand. Now I have a larger rubber spatula and I've wet it with just water here so that I can press the cookies down to be about 1/4 to 1/3 of an inch thick. If you don't wet the spatula, it's just gonna stick and you're gonna have a blobby mess. I also use it to shape them into a circle a little bit. This was probably the most time-consuming part of this entire recipe, is just shaping them into the cookie shape, but it really does make a difference because they puff up quite a bit. And if you want to get them as round as possible, use a bowl or a wide-mouthed glass, and I just wet the rim of it. I'm putting it around the top and then kind of rotating it in a circle around it to really smooth out these circular edges. And then I'm just gonna add some extra chocolate chips to the top for some pizzazz. Pop them in the oven at 350 degrees Fahrenheit for 10 minutes. When you take them out, they're still gonna look wet and not done. They are. Let them cool completely before you handle them, and you will see that they are cooked perfectly. So each of these cookies is only 164 calories and has 18.4 grams of protein. Compare that to a full-size Lenny and Larry cookie, which has 480 calories and only 16 grams of protein. And these cost me about 50 cents less per cookie to make. So I'll actually give Lenny and Larry's credit. Their cookie prices are not as outrageous as I originally thought, but for the calories of a Burger King Whopper, I will definitely pick my cookies over theirs. Next up, we have some roasted chickpeas. These are salt and vinegar flavor. I adore salt and vinegar potato chips, but they're not very good for you. And when you go to buy something like this in the store, we all know how much chickpeas are. Why are they charging us through the nose for roasted chickpeas when we can make them ourselves at home? They're fresher, I think they're tastier, and you can customize to whatever flavor you want. All right, this is the simplest of all the recipes. In a small saucepan, the smallest one you've got, you're gonna add a cup of white vinegar and a teaspoon of table salt, and you are gonna mix it until it is completely dissolved. And then you're going to add a full can of drained and rinsed chickpeas to that. Pop it on the stove over medium heat and cover and bring it to a low boil. After it's been boiling for just a minute or so, you're gonna shut it off, and then I would recommend letting it sit there for about a half an hour to really absorb all the flavors. In a larger bowl this time, you're gonna take those same chickpeas that have been completely drained, but don't rinse them this time. Add 1 teaspoon of oil, just enough so that they get that crisp when we roast them. And we're gonna add another 1/2 teaspoon of salt. And then I like to put it in a big bowl so that I can just shake it up rather than having to stick my hands back in there. You can put this on a cookie sheet. I'm going to use my air fryer basket and just make sure that they're fairly well spread out. And then I'm going to put them in my air fryer on the air fry setting at 450 degrees for 18 minutes. If you're cooking this in your oven, you may need to add a few more minutes, and I would also recommend if you're cooking them in the oven to shake them around halfway. So this entire batch cost me $1.65. And the macros per ounce of cooked chickpeas came out to be 148 calories, 20.2 grams of carbohydrates, 4.8 grams of fat, and 7.3 grams of protein. And it is so simple. You can quadruple this and make several batches of it all together because they are so fun to have on hand. And of course, you can use different flavors also. And we are gonna end this with vegan jerky. Vegan jerky is a great thing to have when you're traveling. It's high in protein. It can be out of the fridge for a while, but they're expensive. They're expensive when you find them, and not all the vegan jerkies have great macros. So a few videos back, I made a seitan-based jerky, which I think is fantastic, but some of you asked for a gluten-free version. Other than the soy sauce, which you could use tamari, this one is tofu-based, and I think you guys are really gonna like it. I'm going to slice a brick of super firm tofu to as thin as I can get it, which is just under, I would say, 1/8 of an inch thick. This took me a while to try to get them nice and even, and at the end, I still kind of screwed it up and ended up with a couple hunks, but I figured, ah well, we'll use them anyway. Put that aside, and then in a small saucepan, we are gonna add a cup of low sodium soy sauce, a 1/2 cup of water, 1 teaspoon of liquid smoke, 1 tablespoon of brown sugar, and then I'm adding a bunch of spices here, which are a tablespoon of garlic powder, a tablespoon of onion powder, a 1/2 teaspoon of chili powder, a 1/4 teaspoon of black pepper, and I also added a 1/4 teaspoon of chipotle powder this time. And we are just gonna whisk this together until there are no lumps or clumps. And we're using a small saucepan so that when we layer all of the tofu pieces in there, that they are, for the most part, entirely covered. You may need to press it down a bit. And then on the stove over medium heat, we're gonna put that same saucepan and cover it and bring it to a boil. As soon as it's boiling, we're gonna go ahead and shut it off, and you may want to leave this on the stove until it's cool enough for you to handle. I kind of jumped the gun here, and I'm going to lay them all out on my air fryer basket, or you could use a cookie sheet that you have some parchment paper or a silicone mat sprayed with cooking spray. And I'm just gonna lay them all out. It didn't quite fit perfectly, but we made it work. And I'm gonna put it in here on the dehydrate setting at 180 degrees for 1.5 hours. Now you can do this exact same thing in your oven. You wanna make sure that you're going in and flipping it halfway, and if after 1.5 hours it doesn't seem quite chewy enough for you, you can always leave it in there a little bit longer. Once this was totally cooked, it made 8.1 ounces of jerky, and each ounce of that was 89 calories, 2.8 grams of carbohydrates, 4.4 grams of fat, and 9.2 grams of protein, and the entire batch cost me $4.78 to make. All right, everybody, thank you so much for hanging out with me on this hot and sweaty Sunday afternoon. How many of you have already turned on your air conditioner? I'm really holding out here, but it's getting tougher by the day. I hope you guys enjoyed these recipes. Are there any other vegan snacks that just like hit you really hard in the wallet every time you pick them at the store? Let me know. Maybe we can make an inexpensive version of them that is just as delicious. And of course, if you're a vegan who's looking for any kind of fitness or nutrition coaching, that's what we do here at Vegan Proteins. That's what we've been doing since 2008. I will leave a link for the coaching assessment down below, and if you fill it out, you'll hear back from one of the coaches within a business day. And there's some other free goodies down there as well, so check it out. If you liked the video, go ahead and like the video, subscribe, hit the bell, all the things I'm supposed to tell you to do at the end of a YouTube video, and we'll talk to you soon. Bye.